first American Veterans Center Awards Gala.
Please rise for the presentation of colors.
God, by whatever name thou art known, we give thanks for this day.
I am proud to play a part in tonight's awards in this inaugural broadcast on the Pentagon Channel.
Throughout the history of this great nation, men and women of courage and valor have sacrificed to provide the security of those they love. George Washington understood the importance of recognizing that courage, and the Purple Heart was born, a symbol of sacrifice and heroism, and a tribute to those who have given their all for freedom. For 50 years, the Military Order of the Purple Heart and the Purple Heart Service Foundation have channeled that same heroism and courage into helping all veterans and their families. With a national service program to assist veterans with VA claims assistance, providing grants for disabled veterans, leading the way in research and treatment initiatives for traumatic brain injuries and post-traumatic stress, along with many other forms of assistance to help our men and women in uniform transition to civilian life. The Purple Heart Service Foundation has been there. Tomorrow's challenges are great. The obstacles are many, the threats real. The men and women who serve today will need our support tomorrow, and we will be there for the next 50 years and beyond. Please join us in helping those who protect our freedom. The next generation of heroes would like to thank you in advance.
I'm Jim Roberts, the president of the American Veterans Center, and on behalf of my colleagues at the American Veterans Center, I would like to welcome you to the first American Veterans Center Awards Gala. Before I turn over the reins to tonight's more than capable MC, I would like to thank you for joining us here tonight. Guarding their legacy, honoring their sacrifice. This is the mission of the American Veterans Center, and tonight's program will introduce you to several tremendous stories from American heroes. Yet every man and woman who has served our nation has a story to tell. And the mission of the AVC is to provide them an outlet to share those stories with future generations of Americans. And now, without further ado, the Master of Ceremonies for tonight's program, the noted television pro and Air Force veteran from Vietnam, Mr. Paul Berry.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the American Veterans Center's Awards. This is the 15th year for the awards, which has grown into a fantastic tradition. This year, we are very proud to start a new Veterans Day tradition, broadcasting the awards around the world on the Pentagon Channel. Let's have a round of applause. This is great stuff. You know, we all know how popular award shows are with Americans. You're going to find award shows for just about everything under the sun. However, until now, there has never been an award show honoring those who truly deserve it most, the men and women who have served and sacrificed for our country. Now, to open tonight's program, we welcome Colonel David J. Clark. He is Executive Director of the Department of Defense, 60th anniversary of the Korean War Commemoration Committee, who has made this inaugural broadcast possible. Put your hands together and make Colonel Clark feel welcome. Sir!
Thank you, Paul, and good evening. On behalf of the Secretary of Defense and the entire DoD 60th anniversary of the Korean War Commemoration Committee, I am proud to play a part in tonight's awards in this inaugural broadcast on the Pentagon Channel. It is my distinct honor to recognize the valor and patriotism of America's heroic veterans and to share their stories which have shaped the world we live in today. I am truly humbled to be in the presence of so many American heroes, from across the generations, individuals whose stories are legendary among today's active duty service members. These awards in this broadcast spotlight the legacy of valor forged by our Korean War veterans, as well as the generations before and since. We are proud to help support this event and to help create a new Veterans Day tradition, honoring those who deserve our eternal gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're now honored because he certainly deserves your full attention. To introduce to you General Richard Myers, 16th Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and Honorary Chairman of the American Veterans Center, to help open this evening's awards. Give him a big round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. To my friend Paul, before I make any remarks at all, we got to thank the Honor Guard, which adds such dignity to an occasion like this, and so professional, and aren't we proud to have them represent us? I mean, and then to Aaron Gant, I think Aaron's sitting over here somewhere. I couldn't follow it all the way. I can't see through the lights, but Aaron's voice and our chaplain, thank you so much for being part of the opening ceremonies here of tonight's dinner. You know, there are lots of reasons that it's great to be an American. It is great to be an American. There are lots of reasons. One of those reasons is we have a great military, and we have had for a long time, and we've changed the course of history for the better in this world. Second reason is we got the American Veterans Center, which tries to capture the stories of all our veterans to recognize their impact, not only on America, but on this world, in this world that we live in. I think that's a tremendous thing. That's a big deal. A lot of folks like to recognize veterans. They make a big effort at the American Veterans Center. We make a big effort to recognize their stories. And then two, if that weren't enough, to make sure that the generations that are going to follow, whether they're going into the military or not, that they have a chance to share in these stories as well. So there's a huge educational component in what the American Veterans Center does. I'm proud to be associated with it. It took Jim a little bit of time to get me to come around, and then I realized I was with a guy and a group of folks that have a real vision. Nothing gets in their way. They take the hill, whatever, and they get it done. So we're lucky to be Americans because we have great folks in the military, and we have organizations like the American Veterans Center that tries to recognize their service and make sure others understand the sacrifices that have been made throughout the decades. Thank you very much for tonight.
Thank you, General. It is an honor to have you here on the podium and to have you as our honorary chair this year as we go through the process here of spending time doing what is most important. There is no greater moment than we can spend than when we honor those who are deserving. And that's what this tonight is all about. We have a number of awards that we're going to be giving out, and we enjoy the fact that you're going to be able to share as we tell the stories and remind ourselves of the tremendous sacrifice many of these men and women who are with us tonight, some of them wearing the Medal of Honor, some of them wearing silver, some of them wearing any medal that they deserved. And it makes no difference about what the medal says so much as it's what it says about the people that are wearing these medals, because they've made these wonderful sacrifices to keep America safe, and it's wonderful. The Doolittle Tokyo Raiders Wings of Valor Award was conceived by Lieutenant Colonel Richard Cole, Jimmy Doolittle's co-pilot, as a means of perpetuating the legacy of the crews who flew on the 16 B-25s that took part in the Doolittle raid April 18, 1942. The award is presented to a distinguished veteran of the United States Air Force who has served with honor and distinction in the mold of the men who flew on that raid. The American Veterans Center is proud to partner with the Doolittle Raiders to present this honor now and for years to come, and to speak of the importance of the Raiders to the history of the Air Force. And to help present the award, we would like to introduce General Larry O. Spencer, Vice Chief of Staff of the United States Air Force, along with Lieutenant Colonel Richard Cole, Jimmy Doolittle's co-pilot on his legendary raid. Welcome to the stage, gentlemen, please.
Good evening. I am honored and humbled to be in the presence of heroes today. When I say heroes, I mean heroes. When I see the pictures and read the account of flying bombers off of an aircraft carrier, loaded down with fuel and munitions, with no guarantee of safe recovery, I am simply awed by their courage, commitment to mission, and commitment to the nation. The courage and innovation of the Doolittle Raiders ushered in an era of global strike that the Air Force provides our nation today. Their acts inspired a nation 70 years ago, and their acts inspire us today. We often debate if the World War II generation is in fact the greatest generation. And I don't know the answer to that, but if I were a lawyer arguing the case, the Doolittle Raiders would be Exhibit A. You know, we debate, and we've seen a lot of debates recently, looking at issues in our country and how we might resolve those issues, and there's a lot of give and take and a lot of this and that and how we should do things the right way or the wrong way. But there is one thing that there is no debate about. There's one thing that is absolutely certain, and that is we have the best Army, the best Navy, the best Marine Corps, the best Air Force, and the best Coast Guard on the planet. And the reason we have the best armed forces on the planet, the best armed forces in the world, is because we stand on the shoulders of heroes like the Doolittle Raiders. It is a sincere honor to assist with the presentation of the Doolittle Tokyo Raiders Wings of Valor Award to General Art Light. Mr. Berry, would you please read the citation?
General Arthur Light served in the U.S. Air Force for more than 38 years. A native of the Bronx, he is a distinguished graduate of Manhattan College's ROTC program. He is a command pilot with more than 3,000 flying hours. He served as Assistant Vice Chief of Staff and Director Air Force. His final assignment was as Commander of Air Mobility Command based at Scott Air Force Base, from which he retired in 2009. Few Air Force officers have been as good a friend, as great a supporter, or as big a fan of the Doolittle Tokyo Raiders. We are pleased to welcome General Arthur J. Light. General Light, please.
Paul made the mistake earlier of asking if those young folks had any words they wanted to share. He didn't ask the general because he knows the general will definitely take the microphone. But I just have to take this moment to say thank you. I'm very honored by this, certainly from the American Veterans Center, but more importantly, from my friends, the Doolittle Raiders. And General Spencer had the opportunity to talk a little bit about how we all have heroes and we watch them as we go through our service. And tonight, I am very humble and honored to take this award on behalf of the Doolittle Raiders. But more importantly, I want to shout out to those soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines that are not with, and Coast Guardsmen who are not with us tonight because they're doing their job protecting us. They're the ones that we should be proud of, and they're the ones who should be getting every award that we happen to have here tonight. But I'll be happy to take this eagle, the Wings of Valor, and I will proudly display it in my home, and I will always remember these great Raiders and what they did to raise the hopes of this country right after December 7th, 1941. It's hard to imagine that on April 18th, 1942, some 70 years ago, they took off, as General Spencer said, not knowing where they were going to land, not knowing how things were going to turn out, but they raised the morale of this entire country. And they do it every day. And with this young gentleman, some 97 years old, who is Jimmy Doolittle's co-pilot, if he can keep coming to all these events, along with the total of 4 Doolittle Raiders that are with us tonight, I am very honored and very happy to be with them and they are lifetime friends, and I guarantee you they are friends with each and every one of you. So thank you very much, and thanks for giving me this opportunity, Paul, and thank you, General Spencer, for coming out tonight and presenting it on behalf of the Air Force. Thank you.
The contribution of women to our nation's military is one that is too great to be ignored. The Lillian K. Keel Award is named in honor of an old friend to the American Veterans Center, who is among the most highly decorated women in U.S. military history. She served as a flight nurse on nearly, listen to this, on nearly 400 evacuations during World War II and the Korean War. Ms. Keel helped us to present the award prior to her passing in 2005. And tonight, we honor generations of American women who have served with honor and valor on the battlefield and for too many years, for far too long, have not been recognized for their contributions. And they were great, and they were many, and they were mighty, and they made a difference. Captain Dorothy Pecora served as an Army nurse during World War II, landing in Normandy and serving with General Patton's Third Army for the duration of the war, including the Battle of the Bulge. At times, her field hospital came under attack, and she narrowly escaped death as her field hospital came under heavy fire, an enemy shell crushing the soldier next to her. Following the liberation of the Nazi concentration camps, she tirelessly cared for the survivors with camera footage of her work used as evidence in the Nuremberg trials. Without any concern for her safety, it made no difference. She was one of 194 women to receive the Bronze Star Medal in the war, as well as five battle awards. Meanwhile, Sergeant Monica Beltran of the Virginia National Guard was deployed to Iraq in 2004. Though trained as a truck driver, she volunteered for turret gun duty. On October 25, 2005, when our convoy came under attack, then Specialist Beltran stood her ground to return maximum suppressive fire in the face of enemy small arms, machine gun, and rocket-propelled grenade fire. Despite a wound to her hand, she continued firing at the enemy until the entire convoy was able to pass through the kill zone. Sergeant Beltran would be awarded the Bronze Star with Valor and the Purple Heart, and is among the most highly decorated women in the National Guard. Do you know their names? Do you know of them? Tonight, we do, and we recognize these two women, the women who served during World War II and Operation Iraqi Freedom, and those from every generation in between. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Captain Dorothy Pecora and Sergeant Monica Beltran. What a pleasure to have you both here. And now the story of our first recipient of the 2012 Audie Murphy Award.
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. At 7:48 a.m. local time, aerial forces from the Empire of Japan began their attack on the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor, devastating the Pacific Fleet and killing more than 2,400 Americans. The U.S. fleet was crippled, with 4 American battleships sunk and 3 heavily damaged and nearly 200 aircraft destroyed. Yet, amid the destruction, all was not lost. At sea during the attack were the Pacific Fleet's 3 aircraft carriers, Lexington, Saratoga, and Enterprise. A moment of fortune that would have a major impact on the course of the war in the Pacific the United States now found itself fighting. In the coming days, weeks, and months, the Japanese continued their onslaught, advancing on Allied strongholds across the Pacific. Reeling, the Allies desperately rallied their forces. On April 18, 1942, the Americans struck back, as Lieutenant Colonel Jimmy Doolittle led a surprise raid on targets within mainland Japan, providing tremendous boost in morale across America. More importantly, the Doolittle raid shocked the Japanese military hierarchy, causing them to reevaluate their defensive position. To prevent further attacks on the main islands, it was decided that an expansion of the Japanese defense perimeter was needed. At the same time, the destruction of the American carriers proved to be of paramount importance, as they were increasingly vital in the Pacific War and were responsible for launching Doolittle's raid. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto and the Japanese command decided to lure the American carriers into a trap, destroying them and occupying a small American atoll at the far end of the Hawaiian Islands known as Midway. Yamamoto counted on the element of surprise as his forces steamed toward Midway in early June 1942, dispersing his fleet with the plan of using those undetected by the Americans to destroy whatever forces might come to Midway's relief. Unknown to Yamamoto was the fact that the Americans had recently cracked the main Japanese naval code, dubbed JN-25, and were aware of his plans. Admiral Chester Nimitz, commander of naval operations in the Pacific, rushed to muster his forces for the defense of Midway. The carriers Enterprise and Hornet were joined by Yorktown, which had been severely damaged at the Battle of the Coral Sea 1 month before. Additionally, 124 aircraft were stationed on Midway itself in preparation of battle. With these forces and his knowledge of the Japanese plan, Nimitz was confident the odds were now even. By the evening of June 4, 1942, it was evident that the Americans had won a great victory, though action continued over the following few days. The Japanese had lost all 4 carriers, a cruiser, and 248 carrier-based aircraft, along with more than 3,000 men. Yorktown, despite efforts to tow it to port, was eventually sunk. Still, Enterprise and Hornet survived, and the United States still held Midway. The result was decisive, and one from which the Japanese Navy would never recover. The victory at Midway has been called the most stunning and decisive blow in the history of naval warfare, and is generally regarded as the turning point in the Pacific theater of World War II. From this point on, it was the United States that would be on the offensive. It is now 70 years since this epic battle. 70 years since these brave men turned the tide of war. For their gallant stand in the face of long odds, and for their incomparable contribution to the Allied victory in World War II, the American Veterans Center is proud to name the Heroes of Midway the 2012 recipients of the Audie Murphy Award.
Congratulations to you. We invite the heroes of Midway to please come forward. Thank you very much, gentlemen. It's a pleasure. Congratulations. We love you both. Thank you. And we should note that a 5th hero of Midway, Rear Admiral Donald Showers, one of the code breakers who helped make the victory possible. He wanted to be with us tonight. Sadly, Admiral Showers passed away on Friday, and we spoke to his family. He loved this. He loved what this was all about, and we ask that you keep him and his family in your prayers. So, Admiral Showers, you will always be remembered here by Jim and the folks at the Vet Center. Now the story of the second recipients of the 2012 Audie Murphy Award.
Throughout our history, times of trial have also provided opportunity for Americans of all backgrounds to prove their worth to their countrymen. For African Americans, the United States military in particular has served as an institution where they have continually proved that they could serve with equal dedication and valor as their fellow Americans. From the Continental Army in the Revolution, the famed 54th Regiment Massachusetts Volunteer Infantry in the Civil War, and the Buffalo Soldiers in the American West, when their country has called, African Americans have continually been ready to serve. The Second World War produced several more now legendary units of African American heroes, including the Air Force's famed Tuskegee Airmen and the Army's 761st Tank Battalion. The United States Marine Corps featured its own group of African American trailblazers, now known as the Montford Point Marines. On June 25, 1941, President Roosevelt issued Executive Order 8802, prohibiting racial discrimination within the defense industry. The law required the services, including the Marine Corps, to recruit and enlist African Americans. The following summer, recruitment for the Montford Marines began, and thousands of black men flocked to recruiting offices, eager to serve their country. Those who enlisted were sent to Camp Montford Point in Jacksonville, North Carolina, where they were to receive basic training. The men quickly proved their worth, and exceptional recruits were singled out to assist in training their own platoons. By the war's end, all drill instructors and many NCOs at Montford were African Americans. Nearly 20,000 men passed through Montford, with almost 13,000 assigned to overseas defense battalions or combat support companies. Montford Marines served throughout the Pacific Theater and saw action on the front lines. Private Kenneth J. Tibbs would become the first Montford Point Marine to die in action when he was killed on the beach at Saipan. Black Marines were vital in the effort to take Iwo Jima, landing in the early stages of the battle, delivering ammunition to their comrades fighting their way from the beaches to the base of Mount Suribachi. The Marines took part in the battle for Okinawa, the bloodiest battle of the Pacific War. Following the war, African American Marines continued their training at Montford Point. In 1948, President Truman issued Executive Order 9981, ending segregation in the United States military. The following year, Montford Point was deactivated, and new black recruits were sent to train with their fellow Marines at Parris Island and Camp Pendleton, where they would go on to fight in Korea, Vietnam, and every era since. In 1965, the Montford Point Marine Association was formed to preserve the history of this trailblazing group of Marines. Finally, on June 28, 2012, the surviving Montford Point Marines were invited to the United States Capitol to receive the Congressional Gold Medal on behalf of all their comrades. As Speaker of the House John Boehner noted, letting African Americans serve in the Marine Corps was called an experiment. Toward the end of the war, the Marine Corps Commandant said the experiment was over, that the men who trained at Montford Point were Marines, period. For their determination to prove that they too belong to be among the few and the proud, the American Veterans Center is honored to name the Montford Point Marines the 2012 recipients of the Audie Murphy Award.
The Montford Point Marines, I would also like to invite Lieutenant General Mark Faulkner, representing the Commandant of the Marine Corps, to help present the awards to the Montford Point Marines. We're welcoming Gunny Sergeant Reuben McNair, Sergeant Eugene Groves, and First Class Willie James Ferguson, Private First Class Willie Woods, and Mr. Halsey Gillis. And we hope that Reuben McNair, if he will, to come forward and speak on behalf of the group. Good to see you. We're good.
On behalf of the Montford Point Marine Association, we appreciate this opportunity to receive these awards, and we're very grateful for it. But prior to 1942, the Marine Corps was a white male institution and wanted to remain that way. The Commandant at that time said that Negroes had no place in the units that he commanded. And he said if he had to choose between 50,000 white Marines and 250,000 Negro Marines, he would choose the whites. He also said that the Negro race was trying to break into an organization where it wasn't wanted. And that if the Negro really wants to serve their country, they had every opportunity to do so in the Army. But the Secretary of the Navy, but the Secretary of the Navy, at that time, Secretary Knox, directed the Marine Corps, the Commandant, to change his racial policy and begin to enlist. And consequently, we started going to the Marine Corps in June of 1942. And I went in May of 1943. Thank you.
Commandant, do you want to share anything? Okay. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you so very much. Congratulations to you all. What a wonderful moment. And I hope you appreciate what a wonderful, my pleasure. Thank you, sir. And I should say to you, believe me when I tell you that this moment means something to these men. It means something to these men who endured, if you can imagine, what it must have been like. First of all, sent to a separate place to learn, to train, and yet be called a U.S. Marine. And the moment when it was said, going to stop this. You'll train with your fellow Marines in that moment. And that doesn't mean it was easy. They weren't that easily accepted. But they endured, and here they stand before you today as fighting men in the United States Marines. I love you all, gentlemen. God bless you. We can only imagine what it must have been like. Our next award is the Raymond G. Davis Award for Distinguished Service in the United States military during the Korean War. General Ray Davis received 18, count them, 18 American and Foreign Service awards during his distinguished career, including the Navy Cross in World War II and the Distinguished Service Medal during Vietnam. However, it is for his incredible heroics at the reservoir, Coastal Reservoir, which he was awarded the Medal of Honor, that he has become a legend in the United States Marine Corps. To pay tribute to the Korean War generation and to help introduce this year's honorees, we welcome back to the stage Colonel David J. Clark, Executive Director of the Department of Defense, 60th anniversary of the Korean War Commemoration Committee. Colonel Clark. General. Thank you.
Good evening, and once again, thank you. On behalf of the Secretary of Defense and KW-60, I am honored, grateful, humbled, and very fortunate to be with you tonight to recognize the extraordinary personal courage and selflessness of two men whose commitment to country and their fellow comrades in arms is nothing short of astonishing. Many have called the Korean War the forgotten war. But over the past 2 years, we in KW-60 have come to view it quite differently. This war and all of its terrible hardships cannot and will not ever be forgotten by the men and women who serve there, nor by their families and the millions of grateful South Koreans whose lives, liberty, and future prosperity were preserved by their noble sacrifice. This year's Raymond G. Davis Award is being presented to two American heroes of the Korean War, men whose exploits are larger than life, the stuff of legends, and to which you'll soon bear witness. The geopolitics of our world has changed dramatically since the armistice was signed almost 6 decades ago. The Berlin Wall has fallen, the Soviet Union is no more, communism is virtually a thing of the past, and the Cold War has receded into the annals of history. Many of these changes were set in motion 60 years ago on a small peninsula in Northeast Asia, unknown to most Americans. Time and perspective have borne out the significance of this effort. The lasting legacy of the Korean War generation is personified by these men and what they did for one another and their fellow man. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel. Thank you so much for saying it. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the story of our first recipient.
Frederick C. Blessé, known throughout his life as Boots, was born to serve his country in the United States military. The son of a general in the U.S. Army Medical Corps, Boots was born in the Panama Canal Zone in 1921, grew up in the Philippines, and graduated West Point in 1945 to become a fighter pilot. The word blessé means casualty or wounded in French, which might have been foreboding for a young officer in the United States Air Force when the Korean War broke out in 1950. Upon entering combat, however, Boots Blessé proved especially adept at inflicting casualties in the form of downed enemy MiG-15s. No pilot proved more eager to mix it up with the enemy than Boots Blessé, as he shot down 9 MiG-15s and 1 LA-9 during his tour. By the time of his return home in October 1952, Blessé had become America's leading jet ace to that point. In all, he had flown 223 missions in Korea. Upon returning home, Boots Blessé would serve as a jet fighter gunnery instructor, squadron operations officer, and squadron commander at Nellis Air Force Base. And he won all 6 trophies offered for individual performance at the 1955 Air Force Worldwide Fighter Gunnery Championship, a feat that has never been equaled. Frederick C. Blasé would fly another 156 missions during Vietnam and rise to the rank of Major General. He has received the Distinguished Service Medal, 3 Silver Stars, the Purple Heart, and many other decorations in the course of a career that accumulated 6,500 flying hours. For his tenacity and skill in the skies over Korea, and for being among the Air Force's early pioneers in the classroom, the American Veterans Center is honored to name Major General Frederick C. Boots Blasé recipient of the 2012 Raymond G. Davis Award.
Please come forward. General Blasé, let's give a big round of applause for him. My goodness.
For an old fighter pilot, that's an invitation that's hard to refuse. I just would like to say that I'm frankly overwhelmed by this honor. I really do appreciate it. I loved every minute that I had in the Air Force and wish I had another life to give to them. But from the looks of what's going on, they don't need me. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, and now the story of our second honoree.
Among trailblazers and pioneers, there exists a common trait of dogged determination and aggressiveness that propel them to success despite the challenges they face. These qualities are certainly present in Kurt C.E. Lee, a hero and pioneer within the United States Marine Corps. In September 1950, Lieutenant Lee landed with his Marines at Incheon, South Korea, along with fellow UN forces to push the North Koreans out of the South. Lee found himself fighting 2 battles, one against the North Korean forces, now aided by the People's Republic of China, and one against the attitudes among some of his fellow Marines who questioned his loyalty. Yet once in battle, those questions were put to rest, as Lee proved a tenacious fighter and skilled combat leader. On the night of November 2, 1950, Lee's unit came under attack by Chinese forces sent to aid the North Koreans retreating from Incheon. Keeping his men focused, Lee directed a counterattack, shouting at the enemy in Mandarin Chinese to sow confusion, and advancing with grenade and rifle fire. Already wounded in the leg, he would be shot in the elbow by a sniper and was evacuated to a MASH unit for treatment. After several days in the hospital, Lee learned he was to be sent to Japan for recuperation. Determined to rejoin his men, Lee and another wounded Marine confiscated a jeep and located their comrades. His arm in a sling, Lee took command of a rifle platoon whose leader had been injured and began drilling them in combat maneuvers. This would pay off dearly 1 month later at the epic Battle of Chosin Reservoir. At Chosin, Lee's platoon was ordered to spearhead a thrust to relieve a company of Marines surrounded by Chinese forces. His battalion commander, then Lieutenant Colonel Raymond G. Davis, ordered him to stay off the heavily defended roads, a sure death trap, instead attacking from the snowy hills. Lee, his arm still in a cast, led his platoon in the attack, advancing through heavy enemy fire, eventually forcing their way to the stranded Marines. Again Lee was shot, and again he refused to yield, regrouping his men to secure a vital roadway. On December 8, 1950, Lee was targeted by a Chinese machine gunner, wounding him seriously and ending his Korean War service. For his role in leading the relief of the stranded Marines, Ray Davis was awarded the Medal of Honor, while Kurt Lee was awarded the Silver Star for his actions in battle. Lee was also presented the Navy Cross for his valor at Incheon the previous month. It seemed valor ran in the family, as Kurt's younger brother, Chu Man Lee, earned the Distinguished Service Cross for heroic actions as a U.S. Army officer in battle that same month. Kurt Lee would go on to serve in Vietnam, retiring in 1968 with the rank of Major. Raymond Davis, who rose to Assistant Commandant of the Marine Corps, called Lee the bravest Marine he ever knew. It is fitting, then, for his groundbreaking path through the Marine Corps and for his valor on the battlefield, that Major Kurt C.E. Lee is named the 2012 recipient of the American Veterans Center's Raymond G. Davis Award.
It is with deep humility that I am receiving this award. I thank the American Veterans Center for according me this great award. Semper Fidelis. Thank you.
Joe Ronnie Hooper. This award is for distinguished service in the United States military during the Vietnam War. Joe Ronnie Hooper is among the most decorated men in American military history, earning 37 medals throughout his service in Vietnam, including the Medal of Honor. And before we show the story of our 2012 honorees, we would like to invite Mrs. Faye Hooper, widow of Joe, to please come forward to say a few words about Joe, and she will help us present the award.
I would like to tell you about Joe the man. Joe was patriotic. He loved his country, the military, and the men with whom he fought. After he was awarded the Medal of Honor, he always said it did not belong just to him, but also to the men in his company. He was proud to be a member of the 101st Airborne, and also especially proud of his company, D Company, the Delta Raiders. Joe was a good father and husband, and it was my privilege being married to him. He would have loved being here and being part of the conference. The dedication and patriotism of the soldiers of this generation would have made him proud. He would have felt especially honored that men as distinguished as Brigadier General Stevie Ritchie and Major General James Livingston are receiving an award in his name. Joey and I would like to thank all of the men and women who have ever served in the military. Because of you, we live in the greatest country on earth. May God continue to bless America. Thank you.
May 2nd, 1968, the village of Dai Do, Republic of Vietnam. The previous evening, major elements of the North Vietnamese 320th Regiment seized the village, cutting off an isolated Marine company from the remainder of its battalion. The Marines were massively outnumbered, with about 800 Marines facing up to 10,000 North Vietnamese Army regulars in what would become a 3-day-long battle. In an attempt to retake Dai Do, Gulf Company was ordered to assault well-fortified enemy positions at the village. When the Marines ran into trouble during their assault, reinforcements were sent in the form of Echo Company, 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines, 9th Marine Amphibious Brigade. Leading Echo Company was then Captain James E. Livingston. On April 30th, Livingston's Echo Company was sent to defend a key bridge near Dong Ha. A few days later, when Gulf Company became bogged down in its assault, Echo was ordered to join. The men of Echo Company found just how well defended the enemy position was when they advanced through a rice paddy for some 500 meters, raked by heavy machine gun fire and blasts from rocket-propelled grenades. Despite the intensity of the fire, Livingston fearlessly led his men in their assault on enemy emplacements within the village, personally leading the assault while directing fire and shouting words of encouragement to his Marines. Twice wounded by grenade fragments, he refused treatment, intent on driving the North Vietnamese from their entrenched positions within some 100 mutually supporting bunkers and relieving pressure on the stranded Marine Company. When the village was finally cleared, the intense fighting had left only 35 able-bodied men out of more than 100 who had entered the battle. For the remainder of Echo Company, however, the fight was not over, as soon desperate pleas for help began coming through the radio from a Marine position in the nearby hamlet of Din To. Not one to sit on the sidelines, Livingston gathered his men and fought their way through enemy fire to join the beleaguered Marines, merging to commence a counterattack on the North Vietnamese position. The momentum swung throughout the day as the enemy was sent reinforcements. Battle was intense, often hand to hand. Eventually, Livingston himself was brought down by an enemy machine gun round. Still, He refused evacuation, firing at the enemy from a prone position and supervising the withdrawal of his men. Only when his Marines were safely evacuated did he allow himself to be removed from the battlefield. Livingston would go on to serve a second tour in Vietnam and was awarded the Medal of Honor for his actions at Dai Do by President Nixon on May 14, 1970. He would return to service in Vietnam one final time, in March 1975, as he served as operations officer for the evacuation of Saigon. James Livingston would continue to rise through the ranks of the Corps, retiring in 1995 with the rank of Major General. His decorations include the Silver Star, the Bronze Star with Valor, the Purple Heart, and the Medal of Honor. In the long history of the United States Marine Corps, few have gained the respect and admiration granted to this noble warrior. It is for this service and this dedication to the Corps that Major General James E. Livingston is the recipient of the 2012 Joe Ronnie Hooper Award.
Well, let me tell you, this is a very distinct honor, and it's really, I'm humbled to be here with Miss Hooper. And I was telling her the last time I saw her husband was probably in 1971, and for you Army guys, you know what the I bar was down in Fort Benning, Georgia. And I walked into the bar and started talking to this guy, and it was Joe Hooper. And we had a great conversation, and I didn't see him again. I also want to acknowledge my fellow Marines who have been here, particularly the Moffett Point Marines. What a great legacy they have left for the Corps, and I was just very much honored to be in their presence. But this award I want to really accept for those young Marines, 17 and 18, 19 years old. One morning at 5 o'clock on May the 2nd, I said, "Fix bayonets." And we had to go across the rice paddy under intense fire. Never one moment of hesitation. And 800 Marines against 10,000 North Vietnamese always said was a fair fight. And when we seized the village, only 35, and it was not 100, it was out of 185, were walking away from that fight. But not a moment of hesitation. That just talks to the spirit and the unique thing we have in America called the American fighting man. And just like these young Americans today, we're not good, we're damn good. And people better watch out. But I'll tell you, I accept that on their behalf. And many of their names are on the wall if you get a chance to go to the Vietnam Wall. And I remember all of them. I can see their faces today. And I'll tell you, God bless them for what they did for this country. And thank you so very much for this opportunity to come to Washington and see all of you. America is great because of the people who are willing to serve and sacrifice. God bless you.
And now the story of our second recipient of the 2012, boy, you're hitting the jackpot tonight there, Faye, of the Joe Hooper Award.
From his earliest days, Richard Stephen Ritchie demonstrated that he had the right stuff to become a successful fighter pilot. Ritchie graduated from the Academy in 1964 and finished first in his pilot training class at Laredo Air Force Base. He quickly gained a reputation as a brilliant pilot, earning the admiration of the legendary Robin Olds. He displayed a brash confidence in the air and in the locker room, making him the original Maverick. Steve Ritchie's work ethic was unparalleled, as he dedicated himself to flying almost every day, making sure he had a complete understanding of all weapon systems, earning him consistently high-performance evaluations. During his initial tour in Vietnam in 1968, Ritchie flew the first F-4 forward air controller mission and was instrumental in the success of the program, flying a total of 195 combat missions. He returned to the States the following year, earning a spot in the Air Force Top Gun School at Nellis Air Force Base, Nevada, and at age 26 became one of the school's youngest instructors ever. In 1972, Ritchie volunteered for a second tour in Southeast Asia, flying the F-4D with the famous 555th Triple Nickel Fighter Squadron. It was during this tour that he would make Air Force history that has never been equaled. In May 1972, during Operation Linebacker, Ritchie shot down his first 2 enemy MiG-21 fighters. 2 months later, on July 8th, he would knock out 2 more MiG-21s in a low-altitude dogfight lasting 89 seconds. On August 28, 1972, Ritchie was leading the strike force north of Hanoi when he received radar reports of MiGs closing fast. Choosing to engage from the front quarter, Ritchie converted to a 6 o'clock position, fired a pair of Sparrow missiles, and downed one of the fighters, his 5th victory. Low on fuel, he was forced to give up pursuit on the second MiG-21. Steve Ritchie became the Air Force's only ace pilot of the Vietnam War, and the only American pilot in history to down 5 MiG-21s, ending his service with 339 missions and 800 hours of combat. For his dedication to the United States Air Force, for his valor in the skies over Vietnam, and for his unyielding efforts to train tomorrow's military and civilian leaders, the American Veterans Center is proud to name Brigadier General R. Steve Ritchie the 2012 recipient of the Joe Ronnie Hooper Award.
Well, as John Bosse said, when we get a microphone, it's really hard to turn down. And I don't like to use notes, but I've been saying so many things I'm not supposed to that recently that I've been told I have to use notes, and I apologize for that right up. A big, big thank you to Jim Roberts and his team. By the way, Major Lee, every time there was a MiG victory, we used to steal the squadron commander's Jeep and drive it up the front steps into the officers' club, but I guess that's not the same thing, isn't it? Jim, I've been coming to events sort of like this ever since I entered the Air Force Academy in 1960, 52 years. And no one does it better than the American Veterans Center in recognizing and thanking our military. And no one does more to inform and educate our students and to inspire us all, young and old. Thank God we still have people willing to risk their careers and their lives to come to the aid of our colleagues, our country, and our allies. People like Thomas Paine and Patrick Henry and George Washington and Billy Mitchell, and Jimmy Doolittle and his Raiders, and General Hap Arnold, and General Jack Singlaub, and General Boots Blissett, and the F-105 pilot who strafed a Russian ship, a Soviet ship in Haiphong Harbor in Vietnam, and General Jim Livingston, and of course, Joe Ronnie Hooper. We are so blessed to always have such heroes. Listen, I'm just a beat-up old fighter pilot who was extremely fortunate in combat. And I'm still flying a high-performance fighter airplane. And I'm married to the single greatest woman I have ever known in the 70 years that I've been bouncing around this planet. So if I get wiped out by Sandy on Tuesday, I will go west a very happy camper. God bless our military, all who support them, past, present, and future.
Tonight's final award is named in honor of one of the Navy's great heroes and the very first recipient of the Medal of Honor for Valor in Afghanistan, Lieutenant Michael P. Murphy. Just 2 weeks ago, the Navy commissioned the USS Michael P. Murphy, named in honor in New York City. We would like to share the story of the USS Michael Murphy and its namesake.
Operation Red Wing involved Lieutenant Michael Murphy, Danny Dietz, Marcus Luttrell, and Matt Axelson. They got inserted into the Hindu Kush mountain region of Afghanistan to hunt down some high-level Taliban operatives. They ended up getting stumbled upon by a couple of goat herders. Came to a decision on if they were gonna have to kill the guys or let them go free, and it came down to Lieutenant Murphy saying, "Hey, that's not what we're here to do. We're going to let them go, and then we're going to go relocate so we can't get caught." The goat herders went back and told the Taliban their location. Anywhere from approximately 100 to 200 Taliban fighters came down on the 4 guys. Lieutenant Murphy ended up going out into cell phone reception, pulled out his personal cell phone, made a phone call back to base. During the time he was shot, hunched over, sat back up, finished the phone call. At the end of it, he said, "Thank you." Wanted to go back fighting at that time. 2 helicopters got sent out to go help out for quick reaction. One of the helicopters got shot down by an RPG, killed all the members on board.
Let's be honest, Michael knew when he went to Afghanistan why he was there. The idea that this ship, the USS Michael Murphy, is now traversing the Hudson past the 9/11 site to be berthed at Pier 88 next to the Intrepid. What can I tell you? I'm just overwhelmed.
It's really emotional because it has his name on it, and you know that's quite an honor to have a ship like this with your name on it.
Michael Murphy represents all that is good about our Special Operations Warrior, and to have a fine fighting ship named after him is the highest compliment one could have paid to Murph and all the soft soldiers and SEALs who perished that fateful day. In the SEAL teams, the greatest compliment one SEAL can bestow upon another is to call him a teammate. It's a simple term, but it conveys everything about how we live, how we fight, and sometimes how we die.
Officers and crew of USS Michael Murphy, man our ship and bring your life.
Drink to the boat until we meet once more. Is wishing you a happy voyage home.
And with that, we say thank you so much, and we turn it over now to Antonio with that wonderful voice, please.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here tonight as an active duty member of the United States Army, the U.S. Army Band, Pershing Zone, the Army Chorus. This is why I was hired by the Army to sing for our American heroes. I want to thank you all with this beautiful song, God Bless America, written by Irving Berlin. While the storm clouds gather far across the sea, let us swear allegiance to a land that's free. Let us all be grateful for a land so fair as we raise our voices in a solemn prayer. God bless America.